It's Random Thoughts. In today's video, we are going to look at the 10 biggest Nilotic languages by the number of speakers. The Nilotic languages are found in Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, South Sudan, maybe a little bit Sudan, and then Central African Republic to some extent, and then DRC, and then Ethiopia. Those are the countries where you can find groups of people who speak languages that are part of the Nilotic group. Which of these languages have the highest number of speakers? That's what we are going to look at in this video. Now, I'm going to start from number 10 and then go all the way to number 1. Of course, I need to point out that most of these numbers are estimations. Some countries have very good records from census, and then some don't. For example, Kenya has a pretty good census numbers, same case to Tanzania and Uganda. But when it comes to DRC and then South Sudan, then we have a little bit of challenge as to how we arrive at these numbers. Now, at number 10 is Turkana. Now, Turkana is a group of people who live to the northwest of Kenya. And the Turkana language, of course, is spoken by this group of people. According to the 2019 census that was held in Kenya, the population of the Turkana people is about 926,000 people. And then, of course, within the Turkana county, there was also a huge number of refugees from South Sudan and from Somalia. So those ones were, the number came to around 160. But when you do give and take, anyways, you have about 1 million speakers of the Turkana language. Now, at number 9 is Nuer. Now, Nuer is one of the biggest languages in South Sudan. And this language is spoken by about 1.8 million people, of course, mostly in South Sudan. But then there are people who speak this language who have migrated from South Sudan, and mostly they've gone to Australia and the US. But then there is also a sizable minority in Ethiopia of the Nuer people. So the Nuer language is at number 9. At number 8, we have the Maasai. Now, the Maasai is a group of people, of course, who live in Kenya. Their language is called the Ma, or the Maasai. Now, the Maasai is spoken by about 1.9 million people. And I need to point out that it's not just in Kenya. According to the census of 2019, there are around 1.1 million Maasais in Kenya. But then there are about 800,000 in Tanzania, and that gives us about 1.9 million. And when I was doing research about the Maasai, I made the point of excluding the Samburu people. The Samburu are often considered to be speaking the Ma language, and there are also other groups that are considered to speak the languages that are very close to the Ma, but I chose not to include them in that group because I realized that there are people in these other groups who don't feel it's okay for them to be put together with others. So I just decided to go with we can say the people who are usually considered Maasai. I decided to go with that. Number 7, we have the Alur. Now the Alur, this is a group of people who are mostly found in Uganda and DRC, but the majority of them live in the DRC Congo, the Democratic Republic of Congo. And in Uganda, according to 2014 census that were held in Uganda, there were around 900 people who identified as the Alur, and of course we assume they speak the language. But then when it comes to DRC Congo, there are challenges with getting the actual numbers. But the number that I found that is more or less, we can say, a little bit reliable is a number that has been put together by an organization called Joshua Project. Seems like it's a Christian organization that has done a lot of work in trying to come up with population numbers, demographics in East and Central Africa. And according to this group, there are around 1.4 million people who identify as Alur. And of course, they speak the language of Alur in DRC Congo. When you put together the number of people who speak the Alur language in Uganda and those who speak the language in DRC Congo, we have 2.3 million, and that puts that language at number 7. At number 6, we have the Lango. Now, the Lango is another Nilotic group, and most of the Lango people are found in Uganda. But there is also a small group that exists in South Sudan. Now, with Uganda, of course, as I've said, it's easy to get the numbers because Uganda does do a census every 10 years. And the last one they did was 2024, but the results are not out yet. Now we are relying on the 2014 census results, and according to the 2014, there were 2.3 million people who identified as Lango or speak the Lango language. And then now when it comes to South Sudan, as I've said, there is a little bit of challenge, just like it is the case with the DRC. There was a census that was done in 2008, and it was done when South Sudan was still part of Sudan. And in that census, the number that came out of that census of people who speak the language of Lango is around 13,000. It's likely that number is not very accurate. Maybe there are a lot more of people who speak the Lango language in South Sudan than 13,000. Anyways, going by the numbers we can get, the Lango is at number 6 by 2.4 million speakers. At number 5 is Acholi. Now, Acholi is yet another Nilotic language that is spoken by people who reside in Uganda, mostly Uganda. There are a few of people who speak this language who are found in South Sudan, just like the Lango. And in Uganda, the number of people who speak this language is about 2.4 million. That's according to the 2014 census. Maybe the number has gone up a little bit. And then in South Sudan, according to the 2008 census of Sudan, there were around 134K speakers of the language. So we can say the total of Acholi speakers is about 2.5 million, maybe a little bit more of that, but the numbers we can get at this point is 2.5 million. At number 4 is Teso or Teso. Now, this is a language that is spoken by people who live along the border of Kenya and Uganda. The majority of them are in Uganda, and there is a minority in Kenya. Now, in Uganda, according to the 2014 census, there are 2.3 million people who speak the Teso language. And in Kenya, according to the 2019 census, there are 500,000 people who speak the Teso language. So we have 2.8 million people speaking the Teso or Teso language, and that puts the language at number 4. At number 3, we have Dinka. Now, Dinka is the most spoken language in South Sudan. Like, it's not like spoken by the majority of people in South Sudan, but comparing it to other languages in South Sudan, it has the highest number of speakers in South Sudan. Now, the Dinka, according to the census of 2008 that was done by Sudan as one country, was about 4.5 million, and there are no other sources of data to give us a more accurate number. I'm suspecting maybe the number is close to 5 million, but we don't have any numbers to back that up as of now. So the Dinka, with 4.5 million speakers, according to the 2008 census of Sudan, come in at number 3. Now, at number 2 is Luo. Now, Luo, of course, Luo speakers are found mostly in Kenya and then in Tanzania. I need to point out that when we say Luo, it can be a little bit ambiguous, and people can argue in different ways as to who is Luo, because some people can argue that some of the groups in Uganda that their languages are very closely related to the Luo language are actually Luo, and then they can even go as far as South Sudan and claim that some groups in South Sudan and even some groups in DRC, like the Jabathola, that they are Luo. But that, again, like the case with the Maasai and Samburu, I decided I was not going to do that. That would have made this very complicated. Now, when we go with the Luo, who are usually considered to be Luo, the number is 5.4 million, and we have 5.1 million in Kenya, according to the 2019 census. And then there are 260,000 in Tanzania, according to the 2022 census that were done in Tanzania. So in total, there are 5.4 million speakers of the Luo language. Number 1 is Kalenjin, and this is a language that is spoken by a group of people who live in what we call the Rift Valley in Kenya. Now, there are groups that are in Uganda that are often considered to be Kalenjin, that is the Sebei people, and also some that are in Tanzania. And I chose to ignore those groups, just as I did with the Luo and the Maasai, and I excluded those and just went with only the Kalenjin in Kenya, especially in the Rift Valley, and the number for that is 6.3 million speakers. So those are the 10 largest Nilotic languages according to the number of speakers. Those are my random thoughts.